Well, I was just about to say, I was like, you've piqued my interest because obviously I never knew about this, and I definitely want to find out more and go and see
So
it.
that's one of my personal favorites, because I even spoke to a few people and said, look, do you know it's a, and I think they just imagine a plaque on a wall.
Yeah.
They don't imagine 25 chairs with third Sikhs, second Sikhs, fifth Sikhs. They don't imagine
No,
all of
I
that.
wouldn't. I wouldn't even expect that to be around. Like, as in, it
See
just
if you could put a
sounds.
link into my video, because we did a video there last year. I know my tie's bent. Every Sikh keeps telling my tie's bent. I was wearing a face mask and I kept going up and down, and my tie got. We're going to have to re-record it at some point. But there was an oath that was taken, and the psychology of Sikhi is quite interesting, because the British understood the psychology.
Yeah.
So you would take your oath for king and country. Okay, but I've got a book there for the Punjab Frontier Force. If you're in the Frontier Force, you would take your oath on the Guru Granth Sahib. They would bring a Guru Granth Sahib to make you take your oath on that, because you might not be loyal to your king, but you will be loyal to your Guru. And they understood that. They made you do that oath separately for Sikh regiments than
So,
the other regiments.
so again, I like this anecdote because it reopens the conversation that happens quite a lot these days, which is how can you be allegiant to the Guru, who in all intensive purposes is the King of Kings, and then also be aligned to a temporal king who, for all intensive purposes, colonized and took control of your land.
Yeah, no, for me, I was just thinking, this, when they annexed the Punjab, they started to understand Sikhi. They start, we had lots of books about, the British view on Sikh. That it is totally opposite. I know it's totally opposite from a Sikhi perspective, from our perspective. But what they were doing were trying to get soldiers to fight to their death, to protect the British interests. And the way they could guarantee that was if they asked that soldier from a small village to take an oath on their guru, because you would die for your guru, but you may not die for Sergeant Smith,
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
might tell you to do something for king of another country, right? That's the way I'm interpreting it. But finding that oath, seeing the chapel, seeing how that force has so much decoration in history. They had their own crypt in London. All that stuff's with the National Army Museum now. But the chapel still exists. And the Gurkhas there have only got two regiments are Gurkha. All the rest are Sikh. And yet the Gurkhas still visit, because it's a connection to Nepal, And we still don't associate that, because of, multiple factors. The fact is, we're still commemorated in London. Those soldiers are commemorated. The Sikh soldier, the officers is the chapel, but the Sikh regiments are only full of majority Sikhs, although I know there was other battalions, but they were still called the third Sikhs, the second Sikhs. For me, it's a Sikh, but if you talk to Tejpal, he'll tell you that there was Pathans, Muslims,
Yeah, yeah, he
and
did.
that's fine. I totally understand that. I just say to him, look, I've got a tough enough job keeping on top of the Sikh history without going into Indian military history. I don't want to get any of that wrong, but for the kids who come on these tours, I just think, look, you did a project at school, about Remembrance Sunday, but look how I can connect it to your own. And then when we
Yes,
talk about the oath,
yes.
we can connect it to more Sikhi. And then if you want to use that to learn more about Guru Gobind Singh, at least we got a platform, because it'll
Yes,
inspire them to
yes.
learn,
I like
Why did
that.
they take that decision? Why couldn't we? But I want to keep it open. I don't want to dictate to them what I want them to think, because I want them to experience and breathe it in, and then come on, do your own learning.
You give them the facts and let them then decide how they want to go with it. You're like, this is what's happened. You can then
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, yeah.
I think, emotionally, I went through all that in the early days. Oh, that's bad. I've been through that bit where I used to be emotionally affected. Now, most of the time, I'm worried about slip, trips, and falls on my tours.
Yeah.
Like some Singh trying to sue me for 2 million or something, I have to put him in a harness.
Carrying around like bubble wrap just to make sure no one falls in it.
I
Just
know I
keep
have to get after so many insurance rules I have to read out at the beginning. You make us sign everything, so we have to cross at safe crossings only. Don't just walk
Yeah.
into the road. It's not East London. But another interesting one is a church. There's a church on the Old Kent Road called the Pembroke College Mission. Now, the Pembroke College is in Cambridge. There is a Pembroke College in Oxford. In Cambridge in the 1800s, they had a student studying theology. That student, because he studied theology, then had to practice that for a year, and he came to the mission. And the mission at that time was how you practice what you learned. You understood Christian theology, And you had to practice that in a poor area of London, and there's no poorer area than the Old Kent
East End.
Road,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is £2 on the Monopoly board, right?
Yeah.
So that gentleman's name was Charles Freer Andrews. Charles Freer Andrews lived at the Pembroke College Mission in the Old Kent Road. And then he decided to venture out and use his missionary skills and go to India. So he went to India in the early 1900s. Then in the 1920s, he was described, and you'll find an article by T. Sher Singh, Sikh Sheikh, called An Eyewitness to Sikh History. So when we had the Guru Ka Bagh Morchas going on in the 1920s, he was eyewitnessing all of this and writing it faithfully in the newspapers back into Britain. And he stayed faithful. And he said these soldiers these Sikhs were soldiers in World War One. They served you in the British Empire. And now that same empire is now beating them with sticks because they're claiming a right to what is rightfully theirs, the garden to the Gurdwara, which was in the hand of the Mahants at the time. And, he's done loads of articles. He was sending them back. You can find these in the British newspaper archive, Manchester, London, everywhere.
I'll be digging them up after this, definitely.
Yeah. And Charles Freer Andrews, for me, he's in the Gandhi film as well. He's everywhere, but the Sikh link to him is always ignored. He's the one who's showing you that the Akalis had taken a non-violent approach of just doing Simran while they were getting beaten by the police. And then, Gandhi saw the impact of that. And then that movement started of non-violent movement was more prominent. We had Jallianwala Bagh at the same time, just 2 years. So all of this stuff makes just that part of the tour, if we go to Southwark and then we can take it just, to me, he was called the greatest humanitarian of the 20th century, and yet we don't even know about him.
So just to clarify then, was he like how today you'll have like the BBC news correspondent in Afghanistan or wherever?
He was a missionary. But
okay.
He was a missionary spreading the word of Jesus in India, but he was being used by reporters to give them reports on what's going on.
So he himself wasn't a journalist or a newspaper correspondent.
I think he became that from what he was witnessing, because by 1920 he'd been there 20 years and he probably got Mathura, the Indian movement. Gandhi kind of trusted him as well, but his reports were going to Australia, Britain, everywhere. So you put Charles Freer Andrews, Fiji, there's places in Delhi, Fiji named after him, but he's an eyewitness to Sikh history because of the Morchas.
So his actual purpose was obviously as a missionary, but his kind of secondary, by default of doing that, then he's also witness to all of this and shares that. Okay.
So he was there in Punjab, in Amritsar, 8 miles away from the Amritsar, witnessing this happening. And the interesting thing is we even have a video of it all happening. It's by ITN copyright, so we don't release it, but ask me nicely, I'll send it to you, but we can't share it online, because of the copyright. I know we're in 2022 now, so we might have extinguished the 100-year the lease. Someone's put that video out on Twitter, and I'll find it for you. But I generally try not to break any legal rules on anything,
Oh, I'm sure I've broken so many like with some of the stuff that I've posted on my Instagram. Like
Instagram's fine, but I was just thinking, here and Aman knows about it. It was part of their exhibition, as well. It was an American correspondent that filmed the Guru Ka Bagh Morchas,
I think I remember a picture of him from one of their exhibitions. I don't know whether I'm just imagining it now, but
a picture, they would have had a little clip it. But for me, it's about weaving and connecting all of that history together to say, actually, that connects to Newcastle because he was there. So when I do my Premier League Sikh one, the Newcastle story is freer. When I do my Monopoly one, it's about the church. He was in London at Pembroke College. When you do the Ireland one, you can pick up the history there. And all of these is trying to get people to retain a little bit more information. And that's the way I try and work. But I'm building upon people who, T. Sher Singh's article is very, very detailed. He was supposed to be in London in 2008, and I bought a ticket at Trafalgar Square at a church to listen to him, and his flight didn't come in or something didn't happen, and someone just read his notes. So it was a really bad lecture. Someone just read his notes that they emailed him, whereas he would have brought it to life if he was here himself, But in my mind, it was Freer Andrews. There's stamps about him in my collection. There's loads of stuff about him. If you just scratch underneath the surface, Imagine an eyewitness to Sikh history of a period when, and he faithfully told that story, because he really accused the British of what the hell's going on here, you can't do this.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I just wanted to find out then, what are the plans for a little history of the Sikhs for 2022? Do you have kind of any big projects or anything in particular coming up? And then, and actually, yeah, let's start with that, and then we'll
Yeah,
we'll,
yeah, yeah.
we'll, we'll
So
move on from there.
2022 is interesting for me because for 2 years we really haven't actively done any tours. We've done our website, we've done a lot of online tours, Sikh Foundation, we did a series with Loughborough University last year. So it was all about just sitting here and developing that stuff. But I'm back on the scene. We start 4th of March, 13th of March, 2nd of April. Tours will start in London again. But our collaborations have really strengthened during the COVID period. So we've had a collaboration with Historic Royal Palaces. We're going back to them to see what this year's collaboration is. So we have these Sikh soldier silhouettes as part of their World War One. So we represented the Indian Army through Sikhs in Hampton Court. We had 25 made. I thought it was one because we were designing one, but they went and got 25 made. So you had 100 Tommies and 25 Sikhs. So that was a nice collaboration. Royal Hospital Chelsea, we've got quite a few events with them coming on. I've trained all their guides now in Sikh history, so I don't have to go. Even if they're doing, like a Chinese group comes in, they'll explain that cannon is from the Sikh kingdom, Maharaja Ranjit Singh. It's not a British cannon, which they keep saying, so we know that. We have an Oxford City Centre tour this year, developed that with Stephen. So I think the tours will start, the research, Tower Hamlets, and then it's all about timing the European tours. We want to get Belgium, France on. I've got a Malaga to Madrid. Can you imagine the Sikh history from Malaga all the way up to Madrid? That's a
Well,
nice
I think
thing.
I remember. I think I first interacted with yourself when I went on holiday to Malta.
Waheguru, yeah, you
And
did.
you saw me, you saw that I was in Malta on Facebook, and you'd commented.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but you
I
commented.
told you, visit here, go
Yeah,
here.
unfortunately I didn't get the chance whilst we were there to do that. But that from that point on, I went, all right, he knows a lot, because for someone at that point, I didn't really know too much about Sikh history, but for someone to just go, "Oh, you're in Malta, go to like to know exactly where to go to see this," I
So,
went,
Ahmed, the way it works is a lot of people do that to me. They say to me, Rab, I'm just here, anything here? And somewhere along, when you've got a genetic engineering imperial mind,
"Yeah."
all I'm doing is little data sets and I'm just keep pulling them together.
You know what? You sound exactly like my older brother. He went to Imperial as well, and again, it's just processing data and making it
It
work.
literally is just processing data, right? So when I know people, I have got a folder full of images of Sikhs from Malta, Sikhs in Malta, 1880s, right? There was 5,500 Indian army, majority Sikh, brought into Malta because of this, Russia war type scenario, the Great Bear. So what they wanted to do was, if they had Malta as a strategic point, they could get to Turkey, Cyprus, Egypt, wherever war was going to break out. Malta would be the strategic point from which the British army would operate. And the way they needed men was bring in the Sikhs from India, the Indian army, right? And they did. And they brought in loads. And there's a town there called Pembroke where 2 Sikhs are buried. I went looking for their burial ground, but it was actually a roundabout. But even the museum has, you can tell they're Sikh, they're not Indian. I can tell they're Sikh, it's Indian army. But then the amount of newspapers I've got, because that war would have broken out, but it didn't. But if it did, that was the facilities. And Sikhs stayed in Malta for about 60 years, only until the 19th. They assimilated into with Maltese, and you saw Sikh Maltese children as families were raised. So, and really interesting. So I've been we were supposed to go again in December, but I'm building my links there, and Spanish Sikh history, French, Iceland, when I went up to there, Stockholm, there's Sikh history in Stockholm, East India Papers, and then you got East African rally driver's car, Joginder Singh, that's in the Volvo Museum, sometimes at Stockholm Airport. So it's all different types of histories. And because we're a little history, I don't say I'm just military or I'm just art.
Yes, you can explore, right?
Yeah, and the amount of cannons that, Berlin, Dublin, I know all the UK cannons, but they're all Maharaja Ranjit Singh's army cannons. They were all given away as trophies to the Prussians, to the Irish, generals, and they're kept and they're preserved and they're in good condition.
What are some of the the Sikh history then in Spain? Is it a
So the
lot to do
Spain
with the
one,
wars?
yeah, no, the Spanish Sikh history, the way I tell that one is through Anita Delgado Briones. So Anita Briones Delgado, she was a Spanish dancer. She's called the Spanish Cinderella. because she was at the king's wedding, and it was Maharaja Jagatjit Singh, the Francophile ruler
Yep.
of Kapurthala,
The one
who
who's
invited
he's got a copy of the Versailles Palace in Patiala or
in
whatever.
Patiala.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also, I'll come on to this because he basically, they were at the Cafe Curzon in Madrid, and he spotted this dancer who he thought was very beautiful and teed her up to be his wife, took her to Paris to train her to be a princess of Kapurthala, married her. She took Amrit, became Maharani Prem Kaur, went to honeymoon in Morocco and saw the mosque in Morocco, Katoubia Mosque. So built her a replica for the Muslim citizens in Kapurthala. When she got to Kapurthala, they realized that she was wife number 5, not wife number 1. And then she just went on tours and she wrote a book about my voyages in India. So she did that. Then she came back and then he divorced her. But he divorced her and he had a big row with her in the Savoy Hotel. And there was a lawyer sitting in the corner who watched this, and he said, that is disgraceful. I'll make sure you get a good settlement. So rather than being divorced and outcast, she actually got divorced, come back to Spain, live in Madrid, had a child who went to Oxford University, her child went to Oxford, I'm sure it was Oxford, because she had a good settlement. And the person who arranged that settlement for her was none other than Jinnah, who was the lawyer who saw her in the Savoy Hotel with the Maharaja and then arranged that separation.
No way.
All these. So I've done an online tour about that.
That's insane. That's
yeah,
pretty
that
nuts.
is insane. And then when I went to Liverpool versus Tottenham European final 2 years ago, there's the Atletico Madrid stadium. Now my cousin and I, we just wanted to go, and he was already there. So I said, I'll fly out and join you. You've already paid for the hotel. We didn't want to get mugged on the tickets. So we watched it in Madrid, fine, had our Liverpool shirt on. But then our flight was 2 days later. Well, what do you do on Sunday? What do you do on Monday? I said, Singh, we're going to go around looking for a grave. So we went into the Concerto del Giusto, I think it is, a cemetery del Giusto. I thought because she was prominent, I'll go straight to the mayor's and, go up to that section and see, because she's royal, right? They must know she's royal. Went all the way. We spent 2 hours dusting leaves off the central section, checking every grave. Where is this Maharani Prem Kaur of Kapurthala, Anita Delgado? After about 4 hours, we didn't get very far. We kind of dejected walking down, and we just walking down this cemetery on a hill. And we got to P4. The photo's not great. I had one Google photo, but I said, look, at the bottom of the thing, there's a cross. So there must be a cross that goes up. So we don't have to check all the graves. We just have to check the ones with the cross, So we thought, and then we found it. We found her grave, dusted it all off, cleaned it up, took a lot of photos. It had a sword of Kapurthala on it, and it says, your son doesn't forget. So that way I thought, okay, now I've got Malaga, I've got the paintings, I've got the Curzon, I've got the palace where the wedding was, I've got the photos, the paintings, and then we've got her death. So we can tell all her life story through a tour. And then people can just go and watch football at Real Madrid if they want.
Yeah.
So we've got a tour, and it's Malaga. You land in Malaga, you finish in Madrid. We've done the tour, but it's a smaller group one. So I don't think there's any country in Europe that I can't find you Sikh history. Switzerland, we've got it. I went to Lake Garda. We can find Sikh history there. So I just say carry on going to Europe. Just touch in before you go, and I'll tell you.
Yeah. No, definitely.
We just did Sikh history in San Marino when the England played there. So there was England footballers club. A friend of mine, KD Singh, went out there. So I just gave him 10 pages. It's in Italy, but it's not far, So he saw all the graves. He took me high-res photos for our website, published a guide now you'll find on our internet. So if England plays San Marino again,
that content will be coming out. No, definitely.
that would come handy.
Yeah. No, definitely.